5 minutes until the beginning of the first qualifying for Coppa AM.
Hello everyone, a very good morning and welcome to the Nürburgring for the next round of the Ferrari Challenge. And this is a special event because it is the Ferrari Racing Days event, which means not only the Ferrari Challenge cars, but of course the XX programs and Sport Prototype and the F1 clients as well. It's been a tremendous calendar from Mugello to Balaton to Jerez, Portimao, La Casale. Here we are in Nürburgring before the Finale Mondiale event to come at Imola. Mid-October, that's when we're looking forward to that. So the Nürburgring, it's an interesting track, that's for sure. We use the GP configuration. There are a number of configurations of this Nürburgring circuit. 5.148 kilometers, that's 3.2 miles, 15 turns, 6 of them are left, 9 of them are right-handers. For me, the favorite parts of the circuit, well, turn 1, which is like a hairpin where you run downhill, and then the wonderful chicane 13, 14, turns 13 and 14. So, as you can see, weather conditions at the moment, well, it's not where we expected it to be in September. A little bit of fog around, but to the best of our knowledge, that's not going to delay proceedings when it comes to qualifying getting underway. So there you can see the circuit in full effect, and just the undulation of this Nürburgring circuit, which catches a number of drivers out. And I have to say, it's one of my favorite circuits. Love coming here. The Nürburgring is something special indeed. So, well, we'll see what our Ferrari Challenge drivers can make of it over the course of the qualifying session to come this morning. We have qualifying for our Coppa AM drivers first and foremost, and they will be taking to this track where visibility is not going to be at a premium, but there is definitely some fog around, Nico, as we would expect with the Nürburgring, and as you alluded when we were in La Casale. Goodness only knows what we can expect when we get to the Nürburgring, because it can change in a heartbeat.
And generally does. Good morning, everybody, here also from this end of the commentary position. It is the Nürburgring. It is, I'm sorry to say, my home country, and it is in this part of the country exactly as it generally is. Weather is a question mark, and it's going to stay that way throughout the entirety of the weekend. And I say weekend even though we're only Friday morning. And given that we're at a Racing Days event, that means our usual scheme of how we do things in terms of sessions when they are is entirely changed, because where we would usually have qualifying on the Saturday and the Sunday for the day's races later in the afternoon, we throw all the qualifying into Friday, and there we can see the first car lined up, and that's the Shintaro Akatsu car, which is going to be for the Repartico's Ram team, the first car which will go out onto the track. But it's still fairly foggy. I mean, the camera, in fairness, it does condense, especially in the wide shot. So visibility is not as compromised as you might guess from the wide shot. So the cars and the drivers will see what's ahead of them. Us seeing the cars is a little bit of a different matter. So if and when we get underway and we misidentify a car because of the fog, please have some mercy with us.
Yeah. As opposed to normally misidentifying just because we are useless. Andrea Levy, he is ready to go for this qualifying session, and there you can see him inside the car. These wonderful Ferrari Challenge 296 cars making their debut in the Ferrari Challenge Europe this year for 2024. So the 171 car, and Andrea has been on the podium a number of times, but is yet to take his win. Could he do it here in the Eifel region of Germany? Well, we will find out when it comes to the racing a little bit later on. The cars are on their way right now for their qualifying session. And the cars making their way out onto this Nürburgring track. Then, as I mentioned, it is a real challenge. Love the Nürburgring, always delivers some drama, that's for sure. And the weather just throws a further piece of drama into it. Now, this is turn 1 that I was talking about, which is like a hairpin. You run downhill. There are various entries. There are various exits. The runoff area tends to get used quite a lot here at turn number 1. And yes, it will be interesting to see how our Ferrari Challenge drivers handle it, because you can take different lines into that turn number 1, and you can make a move at turn number 1, which you can execute through turns 2 and 3 as well. Through many years of experience of being here, I've seen that happen more than once. Jan Sandman, center picture right now. And then we see the 134 car of Mutlutazev for ML Fry Racing. So drivers making their first tentative steps out here on the Nürburgring for qualifying now. Qualifying brings, of course, grid position at the end of it, but not only grid position, an additional point if you bank a pole position. So if you're fastest in qualifying, that can not only give you P1 on the grid, but also an additional point. And at the moment, points, as is the case for every race event, are of critical importance. Zoe Skrimpias, we can see going through turn number 7 right now, and accelerating for the left-hand kink, which is turn 8 and 9 on this Nürburgring circuit. This is called the Grand Prix, the GP configuration. As I mentioned, there are a number of configurations that you can use here at the Nürburgring, and of course we must give mention to the fact that it also forms part of the iconic Nordschleife, which we will not be using for the Ferrari Challenge, Nico.
No, and yeah, well, you say that, and I think it would be interesting for us. As good as the 296 Challenge car is, we've heard it before from many drivers, the Nordschleife is a totally different beast, and I think the drivers are quite happy for the moment to be on more familiar territory, especially with visibility at least somewhat compromised. So, yeah, the Nordschleife is something else entirely, but the Grand Prix track is fascinating and a good one in itself.
You mentioned there how our television broadcast cameras condense the fog. I have to say, through the final sequence of turns, it looks at its thickest, if I may say. Of course, it will lift in due course. Actually, the cars running around on the track will help in that lifting exercise, if you will. So, the Ferrari Challenge here at the Nürburgring then, and qualifying for our Coppa Shell AM cars getting underway right now. 30-minute session on the clock then, and Shintaro Akatsu then in the 115 car is contesting this. Big number of drivers out there in the Coppa Shell AM category. It's been such a huge category. You can identify the Coppa Shell AM cars through the black strip across the top of the windscreen. As we continue to watch Shintaro Akatsu, who took a podium in the final race, if memory serves me correctly, in Le Castellet. I think he banked a P3, his best result of the season so far, and therefore should come to the Nürburgring with a degree of sort of confidence buoying him, and by buoying him I mean B-U-O-Y-I-N-G, you know, just elevating his confidence level, thinking, right, I've had one podium, I want some more here. So Shintaro Akatsu on his way in this qualifying session.
Indeed, and as he is going through the second sector of the circuit, and you can't quite see it, but it dips down quite a bit. Obviously, the Eifel region is quite undulating, the Nordschleife in particular, but also on the Grand Prix track. Here you can see it a little bit, how it climbs up from that part of the track, and then towards the final chicane and the last few turns before going back across the hotel to the finish line.
I always consider this like the back straight, really. I mean, there is a turn in it, but it's a completely full jack kink. And you run behind the paddock, don't you, before reaching this chicane that you were talking about just a few moments ago, where you can see the bollards there. That affords drivers a shortcut. And many drivers over the course of many, many years have used that. Often they didn't want to, and they were kind of forced into doing it, because you go into the chicane. The optimum line is, of course, being on the inside. Yeah,
there you can see how you're supposed to take these this chicane, but sometimes, especially when you're in a battle and you try to get alongside, sometimes the only exit is, or the only escape is just to go a little bit straighter than you intended to, which sometimes can elevate you and somewhat jump you over the curbs, which, in fairness, in this qualifying session is maybe not as prevalent. So where are we in terms of times thus far? No graphics for you on the screen, but we have the benefit of a timing screen. Shintaro Katsu with a 2:12.266 currently sits on top of our timing screen. Josef Schumacher P2, Luis Perescoya P3, but everybody from Luis Perescoya down is more than 6 seconds down from the best time, so consider those times not to be as relevant and as competitive yet. So with 23 minutes and 55 seconds or so remaining, there is still lots of time for all the drivers that we have, and we will see quite some change to the order on our time screen.
I do not doubt one element of what you are saying, as never I do. We've got some, dare I say it, fairly potent drivers who have not yet shown their face in this qualifying session. Eric Cheong is one of them. Another one is Andreas Koenig. Of course, it's a relatively home gig for Andreas Koenig, the Gome Motorsport Haupt Racing Team driver. But at the moment, as Nico has alluded, it is this man, Shintaro Akatsu, driving the 115 car for the Ineco team, who is currently fastest with a 2:12.266. And as Nico also alluded, expect to see those times come tumbling down as the track rubbers in a little bit. And indeed, he's just taken 5 seconds out of his previous best time and delivered a 2:08.025. Here comes Josef Schumacher, who now vaults everyone with a 2:06.471. And you can see the car getting a little bit skitty into turn number 1. And Zoe Skrimpias now has gone quickest with a 2:05.752. So we're seeing times in the 2:05s as being the fastest at the moment. Do expect them to be even better than that as we take a look into the XX Programs garages here. And these wonderful FXXK cars and FXXK Evo cars. Truly glorious machines. I've had the privilege of being a passenger in one of those, and it's breathtaking. That's all I can say. Utterly breathtaking. The very man that gave me a lap, or several laps in one of those cars, is actually racing this weekend. So more about him when we get to his particular category. Here's Zoe Skrimpias then, who is fastest with a 2:05.752. Then it's Mutlu Tarzev, then it's Josef Schumacher, then it's Shintaro Akatsu. Louis Peruskia is 5th fastest at the moment, ahead of Andrea Levy, Alvaro Ramos, Jan Sandman, and Andreas Koenig has made his first tentative steps around the Nürburgring circuit. Incidentally, he's driving a T car this weekend. What does T car mean, Dave? Well, it's effectively a spare car.
Oh, it's not where they make the tea for you.
You silly man.
All the levity aside, yes, indeed.
All the lavatory aside?
Yeah, well, surely that as well comes with the tea at some point. Zoe Skrimpias, we are following. He is following in his own footsteps of success. He has been really, really come on very, very strong in his premier season here in the Ferrari Challenge. And he is continuing that trend, even though Eric Chung, for the time being, has unseated him into P1, and Josef Schumacher has vaulted all of them with a 2:04.350. But Zoe Skrimpias still with that trajectory, and he is recapturing that P1 position. I mean, we're still 20 minutes away from the end of this session, but it just underscores how consistent Zoe Skrimpias is going about his racing exploits in his very first season of racing, which feels remarkable.
It does feel remarkable. What's also remarkable is with 20.5 minutes remaining in this qualifying session and Jan Sandman going quickest at 2:04.025 right now. What we're seeing as the session continues, we're seeing the margins between the top drivers reduced to tenths, rather than there was the big sort of seconds earlier on in the session. So everyone in the 2:04s. Are we going to see a sub-2 minute time? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, Nico, because even allowing for the track to rubber in a bit over the next 20 minutes, I think to try and find 4 seconds between now and the end of the session might be a tall order. Will we see it in our following qualifying sessions later on today? Possibly so. In fact, almost inevitably so, I would have suggested.
Yeah, we can see that Zoe Skrimpias, Josef Schumacher, other drivers still improving, and I would say that maybe a 2:02 dot something is realistic in this session. Obviously, the track will evolve, it will get warmer, the sun might even come out over the rest of this morning. And don't forget, you'll see the same drivers later on in the afternoon for another attempt, because we throw all the qualifying in one day.
Yes.
So certainly when the sun potentially is out and the track has rubbered in more, then we might see the 2-minute barrier fall indeed. Josef Schumacher is one who's trying to rattle that barrier.
There he is.
At least he's trying to rattle the 2:04 barrier, and he's going about that with a vengeance. And we expect by the time he hits the timing line, it's a 2:02.796. So did it in one go. So dare I say the 2:01 is in play. So Skrimpias comes within a fraction of a second, a 2:02.003. So almost a 2:01 time. So
there's Zois's partner Jemana looking on to see how he's performing, and I would suggest pretty good at the moment, and being 3 1,000ths away from being into the 2:01s. Perhaps our sub-2-minute time actually is not the tall order that I thought it was going to be in this qualifying session, Nico. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. So it's Zois Skrimpias from Josef Schumacher and Shintaro Akatsu, ahead of Jan Sandman, Eric Chung, Mutlu Tarsef, Talal Shayer, Andreas Koenig, Andrea Levy. Then it's Alvaro Ramos, Guy Fave, Louis Peruskia. And yet to see times set from Stephen Earle, Lisa Clark, and Roland Hertner. They are the three that have not yet posted a time in this session, of which there is 17 3/4 minutes remaining. It's Nico and Dave on the early morning rave here at the Nürburgring. The Ferrari Challenge then reaching its conclusion for 2024. Not at this event, but when we go to Imola for the Finale Mondiali being held this year in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, as we watch Josef Schumacher. A 2:02.796, his previous best time. Now, Sector 1 for Josef was not brilliant, and therefore this may not be a time that challenges his previous best of 2:02.796. Very nearly 8/10ths quicker is Zois Skrimpias, who ironically is the car that's following him, as the fog looks to get even thicker there around that kink. And there you can see the very two drivers that I was talking about. Josef Schumacher bails, brings the car into the pit lane, allows Zois Skrimpias to continue on his way, as we can see, unabated and unhindered by anyone other than the weather conditions, and gets ready to break the timing beam, and he has set faster times. A 2:01.734 now from Zois Skrimpias. So all of a sudden, Nico, in a minute and a half, we'll reach the second half, if you will, of this qualifying session. And it is beginning to liven up a tad.
indeed, as if the Ferrari Challenge needs any livening up,
Well,
it generally
quite.
is fairly lively, even when they're not racing in the best possible way. But yes, absolutely. And we see that we're, well, halfway through the session. Generally, or in some occasions, it tends to be rather a ramp into the qualifying session with less activity towards the beginning and then a frantic race towards the end. It's not here, not today, as the drivers come out fairly early.
A cornucopia of qualifying.
Indeed, and you know, the visibility is improving in some parts, and other parts it feels like it's deteriorating a little
I agree.
bit. Well, welcome to the Nürburgring, I guess.
Yeah. We warned, did we not, when we were in La Castelade, the Paul Ricard circuit in the south of France. Seems like an age ago now, and it was right at the end of July. We said that we enjoyed really rather lovely weather conditions there, and we felt that it would be altogether different at the Nürburgring. And we weren't wrong, you know. It is different. Here's Zois Skrimpias then, 2:01.734. His Sector 1 this time was not an improvement. He was 3.5 tenths down on his previous best time, so maybe not an improvement from Zois Skrimpias on this occasion as he approaches the chicane now. And that's turns 10 and 11. I beg your pardon, turns 13 and 14. And he has brought the car into the pit lane. Pit lane which has found favour with so many drivers. I mean, this place is full of legend, of course. And the legend just being added to with the addition of the Ferrari racing days here at the Nürburgring. You're very welcome. Delighted that you're joining us for qualifying as we look at the Zeus Scrimpias Nico Rapata Corsa Ram identifier on screen. He is currently the fastest out there, and in fact the P1, P2 and P4 in qualifying have all come into the pit lane. Now that's turn number 1, and I mentioned that for me it's one of my favorite turns here at the Nürburgring because it affords a great opportunity for overtaking. There you can see advice being taken on by Zeus Scrimpias right now, and encouragement being offered. He's done a very good job. There's Jemana to offer her words of encouragement and advice, and there we can see the 186 car of Jan Sandman. And Charlie Hollings, his driver coach, is down there talking to him right now. Jan Sandman is currently sitting P5, and Jan has taken a race win this year, and he's had a number of podiums as well. Now he's one that's had to pick himself up from the ravages of La Cassale, where he didn't finish in the in the second race there. So he's had to take the summer break to dig deep and come back and get ready to be as competitive as we know that he can be. And never ever discount Jan Sandman from being at the very sharp end of not only qualifying results but race results as well, Nico.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just underscored by the fact that before his non-finish, he scored three podiums in a row: a P3, a P1, and a P3. So, on a very good, rich vein of form overall, as the Eric Chung car is taking center stage for us, crossing the timing line, not with an improvement. He's currently down in P8, and I say down by his own standards. He also a race winner with a magical race in Balaton, where he actually was in the lead, took a drive-through penalty, and came out still in the lead. And
remarkable, wasn't it?
To the point where it even confused us to a degree, where we thought, like, well, did he take a drive-through penalty? And indeed he did, and indeed he made it work for the win.
In fairness, I think I was more disturbed and confused than you were, and I actually had to go and apologise to Eric because I felt that I'd not given him enough credit for having achieved what he had achieved. Because let's be honest, Nico, you and I have been around motor racing for more years than we care to remember, and most other people care to remember. And very rarely do you see a driver that comes in to take a drive-through penalty from being in the lead and still retain the lead when he comes out. I mean, it's almost unheard of.
Especially in a competitive series like the Ferrari Challenge, and especially in the very, very competitive Coppa Shell, where we've had so close races, Coppa Shell Am, of course, where we had so close races, and all of them have been extremely, well, almost all of them have been extremely close, with many of them going to the checkered flag. Just think back to Jerez, where it was Zeus Scrimpias and Andreas Koenig who were effectively trying to drag themselves across the line with a dead heat. It was so close, and so it's really remarkable for a driver not only to be able to win from a drive-through penalty, but to come out in the lead directly. So that was something else.
What's also remarkable is your ability to recall those little facts from previous races where I have to have reams and reams and reams of paper to remind me of even which year we're in. Yet you have this amazing recall, and you're quite right. That battle between Zeus and Andreas Koenig was one really, really enjoyable. Here we can see in replay. Now, this is what I was saying about turn number 1 and the various lines that you can take through turn number 1. Now, this is not optimum. It has to be said, but it just goes to prove, and Tal Al-Shaair found out that the early morning dew that settled on the painted parts of the circuit will spit the back end of the car around, and that's exactly what happened to Tal Al-Shaair. His entry into turn 1 was not optimum. Found himself on the slippery stuff, and the back end of the car went around. No harm done. Was able to hold on to it perfectly okay, and has continued in his qualifying quest, if I can say so. So the car's continuing then on their qualifying session And yeah, for me, the fog is just a little bit lingering in certain places rather than others. So, Zoe Skrimpias, Josef Schumacher, Mutlu Tarzev, Eric Chung are the top 4. And the best time so far are 2:01.734, which is better than the time we expected to see probably at the end of qualifying, as we're looking at Andreas Koenig right now. And if a driver is out of position from qualifying, Andreas Koenig, I would suggest, is one of them. He's currently P10. Now, I mentioned, Nico, he's driving a T car. He's driving a spare car, so he's not quite as familiar with this car as he is his own car. I spoke to him yesterday, and he said, I'm still trying to get as one with this car. And the qualifying session was going to be effectively almost another test session for Andreas, as he just maximizes his comfort with the car.
Yeah, definitely.
There you can see him and various drivers pushing just a little bit too hard. I think that's Jan Sandman, isn't it? Just coming down the hill there, which reinforces what you were saying about the topographical nature of this circuit and its undulations. It can catch you out when you run downhill and carry just a little bit too much speed. You're not able to turn in.
Yeah, absolutely. And this turn 1 here at Nürburgring, if you look at it, if you just look at it on the screen, it doesn't look all that complicated. It's a turn 1, it's a right-hander, and then you have a left-hander. But the thing is, just before you get into the brake zone, there is a little bit of a kink to the right-hand side. So you have to factor that in. You can't get too far to the outside, because there is where moisture is, especially in this kind of condition. You can't get too close to the inside, because if you try and cut into the corner, there is that elevation change. And we've seen multiple drivers effectively jump over the curbs on the inside, and that really puts any end to your ability to stop the car on the track and make the turn. So it's really, for a turn 1, and we will maybe see when we follow Roland Herter through the fog and into that turn 1. We don't quite see it, but there you can see there is that little bit of a kink, and then you have to kind of adjust your direction. You can't go too far to the inside, can't stay too far to the outside. It's not easy at the pace you're making.
There are so many factors to turn number 1. It's a very, very sharp right-hander. You're running downhill. There's a little bump as you approach turn number 1. As you say, if you're tight inside to take the curve, that can really unsettle the car and often cause you to be propelled into other cars. There's Josef Schumacher just looking on. He at the moment is P2 at 2:02.796. I venture that he won't be going again because he's out of the car, as you can see, and looking on. So yeah, that turn number 1 offers us so many different opportunities to describe it, and for the drivers, opportunities to try and use it to their advantage. So Skrimpias and Josef Schumacher are not going to go again. Roland Hertner has elevated to P3. Tal Alsher is P8. For me, the drivers, Nico, that are perhaps a little bit out of position are maybe Andreas Koenig, maybe Eric Chung as well. Did I expect to see him higher up the order than P5? If I was a betting man, I'd have probably said yes. There is Zoe Skrimpias. Now, despite the fact he's still in the car, I don't think he will go out again for the final 6 minutes, because unless anyone is getting close to his time of 2:01.734, he's not going to go out and respond to that, because the tyres that the drivers are qualifying on, so for example, this is qualifying session 1. These tyres that they're using in this qualifying session, Nico, will be the tyres that they use in race 1.
Yeah, absolutely. That is how it is designed by the rules and regulations. Tomorrow for Quali 2, generally you see that they use the tires from the previous day's race. That's going to be different today, because they haven't done a race on those set of tires. So it's going to be a different strategy potentially, or very likely, for qualifying number 2 later on. There is Josef Schumacher as we take a few super slow-mo looks at some of our great 296 challenge cars here at the Coppa at Nürburgring.
was really interesting about that little package, if you will, of what's happened during this qualifying session is you saw there really well just how the drivers were getting braver going through that chicane in terms of attacking the inner curb going into the chicane. Most of them just kissing the outer curb, but the inner curb, to get the best trajectory through turn number one, you almost need to launch the car across turn one. Curb one going into that chicane. Amazing, really, really. I was watching that, and those drivers, including Zoe Skrimpias and Roland Hertner, that were choosing to really attack that curb, they were almost within a centimetre of each other as we get a red flag on this qualifying session. I wonder whether that is because the visibility has deteriorated. Yeah, we'd only got less than 3 minutes remaining in the session, so I'm sure the session will be suspended, will be completed.
Yeah, definitely. And in fairness, there were only 2 cars out there on the track, and neither of them going at any significant pace. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that red flags brings the session to a close, not only temporarily,
Session
but
will not restart.
Indeed, confirmed that it's not going to restart. So the timing that you have at the left-hand side of your screen is indeed the result of our qualifying session. That means it gives another point to our championship leader, Zoe Skrimpias, alongside with a fairly decent starting position, I dare say.
You're right. Zoe Skrimpias from Josef Schumacher, from Roland Hertner, Mutlu Tarzev, I think one of his best qualifyings to date. Then it's Eric Chung, Shintaro Akatsu, Jan Sandman, Talal Shayer, Andrea Levy, Andreas Koenig, Guy Favre, Stephen Earle, Alvaro Ramos, Lisa Clark, and Louis Perusquia. That's the order in which they've qualified, as you can see on the graphics on the left-hand side of your screen, and their confirmation from race control on your screen too, that this session will not restart. Therefore, we'll bring you the classification from qualifying, and I rather think that we can see no other reason why the session was suspended, because the visibility has deteriorated somewhat. So well done to all the drivers for being out there during qualifying and for setting the times that they did. So the Nürburgring then and this is where it's deteriorating in my opinion, Nico. It's right where our commentary studio is on the start-finish straight here.
Yeah, definitely. There is the classification for you in pink and black and white.
Zoe Skrimpias, P1, Josef Schumacher, P2, then Roland Hertner, Mutlu Tarzev, Eric Chung, Shintaro Akatsu, Jan Salmon, Talal Shayer. They are the top 8 drivers. And from P9, it's Andrea Levy ahead of Andreas Koenig. Guy Favre, Stephen Earle, Dr. Stephen Earle. Then it was Alvaro Ramos and Lisa Clark and Louis Perusquia. That's how they qualified. That's how they will start their race 1, which of course comes up tomorrow. You will see the Coppa Shell Am drivers back out on track again today for their qualifying 2 session. And we have qualifying sessions to come for our 488s for Coppa Shell and also for Trofeo Pirelli. From Nico and myself, bye-bye for now.